So one thing that you can do too is just try to move that one sequence to different places. So if you're doing taking that and actually moving that up to the next position, which would be so right there you're taking the same notes, but I'm taking it and putting it here instead. So you could take the same thing and move it to another place on the scale, which is just so what I would do is even just take that and see how many different places in that one scale you could put. A lot of just finding different things to play is going to involve taking the same phrasings that you already use and doing them in different places, because you're just going to get a much different effects. When I end on this note, I'm getting kind of a seventh effect. That's what that is in relationship versus here you're ending right on the consonant, and it's just you're ending on the root there. And there you're ending on the fourth. So you're kind of getting that feel. All right, does that make sense? So it's like what we talked about in that most recent lesson that we had, where I was just ending on different notes, and you brought up. I noticed you end on this a lot, which I think it was just the tonic, yeah. But just pointing out whatever note that you end the phrase on, that's going to have. Anytime you're holding notes out, it's going to have over a chord. It's going to have more of a chordal effects. Here's the original one you did. Which one? When we do that, yeah, that's very consonant right along with that. Let's try it with this one. So that one, it's the fifth. And it's consonant, but it's still, if I'm playing like a minor seventh chord there, I'm kind of cutting out that fifth way. But anyway, yeah. So if I'm playing this underneath, I'm sort of adding in a tone that isn't in that chord, even though it's being played up here. And then try this one real fast. That one's going to sound a little awkward. So this one's going to be so this one's going to sound odd. You're going to end on there you go. So that one, try that one real quick over the chord. So that immediately gives it more of a, you're ending on a note that is like it's a third in relation to that one. So you're getting this sound in there. But let me give you something that would be a little more practical in this instance. So the that same pattern, I believe it's the one that goes over the two. But anyway, you could do this one, probably sound way better. Even though that note's not in that pentatonic, that pattern, the other kind of pentatonic would fit over that. We're going to take this note from that scale. Try this. Cool. So that, having that note in there sounds way more bluesy, even though it's not part of that minor pentatonic scale. It sounds way more bluesy than if you were to end on that actual note. So this is a perfect example of, you know, what works in theory does not always work in practice, which we've certainly talked about before. So, and so just to show you where my brain was going with that, I'm taking, let's see. Yeah, so it would be the second position. So I'm taking the second position of the major pentatonic scale. I'm taking the second position and putting it over the fifth position, which would be the minor pentatonic. So here's your minor pentatonic. And then here's the second position over that same root. All right. So what's happening is that here's the minor scale. And I'm doing the caged version because it's way easier to see what I'm talking about than if I do the 3-note per string, because you're not going to see what's going on over here if I'm going up here. So anyway, that's why cage patterns are handy if you're doing pentatonic stuff like this. So the minor pentatonic, that's where that comes from, is that scale. But in that pattern, I could also fit that Dorian position in there. It's just going to target different notes in the minor scale. Whoops. Okay. So both of those, even though that doesn't originate from that point in the scale, you can fit it over that and it will target different notes. So anyway, I could descend in one. And ascend in the other. And it sounds like I just maybe moved around on the neck, but I didn't. I just changed what notes I was targeting simply by using different pentatonic patterns. So there's the minor. You can hear when I play those over each other, it doesn't sound like I played any like drastically different notes or wrong notes or notes that sounded out of key. So a lot of the time when people come to me with like Hendrix songs and stuff like that, he did this kind of stuff a lot, where he would, flip whatever modes he was playing around with. And plenty of other players do this too. He certainly wasn't the first or the last to do that, but made that style of playing popular. So real quick, try this. Try just playing. So your minor, and everyone who has a guitar in their hands, I would do this right now. So you got your minor pentatonic. Play that up and down, and then you've got the second position. There's that one. So that one's going to be 5/7 on the first three strings. So 5/7 on the first three. And then you're going to have 4/7 on the next string. Then 5/8 on the next one, then 5/7 on the last string. Alright, so if you know your cage patterns, you can play the minor cage up and down, and you'll see that those notes also fit. So you could switch between those two, and you're going to create movement without actually moving up or down the neck. So, and if you want to throw in like any jazzy chromatic notes, those are a good place to do that too. So yeah, the main takeaway from this is sequencing. So take the same licks, try them in different places, but keep the same scale. There it is from that note. And I'm just starting from the highest note on each string. There, if I did, it sounds kind of off. So like I said, throwing in the note from the Dorian pattern. just sounds way more bluesy than if you go to a minor third right there. It just doesn't have the same sound. So real fast, can you play me just a A minor or a minor, A minor seventh or something like that real fast? So there I just used the two different scales. Over that, you can probably hear there's definitely a different sound, but again, didn't sound out of key. So the main thing was the sequencing, but also if you're doing a sequence and the note in the scale just doesn't sound right, you can, in this case, I knew where that other thing originated from, but even if you didn't know, you could just just try a different note, see what happens. But even just like a half step down, if you're doing these pentatonic patterns and you end on that note, it sounds weird. If you're using this minor pentatonic, try throwing in that note below it instead. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know how you you can just put like the Dorian pattern over top of this. I mean, how did that work? I've never done that before.
Yeah, so it has to be the you wouldn't put like major scale Dorian part, but you would take the pentatonic. The
pentatonic will fit over it.
Correct.
But the diatonic will not because they'll have all
Yeah,
notes in it.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
So because they're pentatonic patterns, here's what happens: is the other pattern targets the notes that the original pattern cut out. That's what happens in a nutshell.
Okay.
So when you smack both those patterns on top of each other, you'll actually see the full scale, that full gauge pattern.
Yeah, that was cool. I didn't know
So
that.
one of the first things that we're going to be doing is just a basic blues jam, and we're going to do that in A. That's going to start over. And there's a couple different variations on that. You can just do 2-2-4-4 like that. You can also do 2-2-4-2. You can also do 2-2-4-2-5-2-4-2 like that. And here I'm going down to the low E. Here's D.
No key needed.
But or you can just do a simple back and forth like that. So that's going to be the main thing is A, here's D, here's A, here's E, here's D again, here's A, all right? So you can do either of those and play along. Do some variation on that. So you can use that pattern. You can also use the one I was just talking about. All right, so if you're looking for two things to use outside of your normal scales that you would, that would be something great to do. I'll go over it one more time again. Minor pentatonic over A. And then you would use the second position over A as well to get different notes. Okay, if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand in the chat or on the call.